Make the choice to believe it happened for a reason. Well, that's what attorney Richard Bernstein from the law offices of Sam Bernstein says as he goes through tasks every day like everyone else, except his are done in complete darkness.
When you're blind, and I've been blind my whole life, you live with a sense of purpose. And I think ultimately, if you're able to live your life and believe that you're part of something bigger, part of something grander, part of something more noble than yourself, if you're able to believe that you're part of a plan, you might not know the plan or appreciate the plan or understand the plan, but if you're able to believe that this is something you're part of and that you were created this way for a reason, you really live a better life. You might not have an easy life, you might not necessarily have a happy life, but you'll live a life of purpose. You'll live a life of mission. And if you're able to live that way, I think you really get to live life at its core and life at its essence.
Wow.
That's my real belief. I think ultimately, the reason I'm so passionate about life the way it is I have come to believe that other than the choice that we make as it pertains to the powers that exist between the forces of good versus evil, that all else that happens to us, that everything else that occurs in our life has been inscribed and has been put forth in the book of life. But the one power that we as individuals ultimately have is how do we choose to react to that which is chosen for us. And I think at the end of the day, when you look at life is really a set of experiences. Some experiences are going to be good, some experiences are going to be bad. Some experiences are going to be tragic, some experiences are going to be triumphal. But I think if you're able to see life in the manner it's intended, which is that it's created by a sense of experience, and the more experiences you have, whether they're for good or for bad, the more life you're ultimately able to live. So I think when you ask a question, how do you handle the stress, or how do you handle the difficulty, or how do you handle the challenge, I think what it really comes down to is the sense that I so genuinely believe in what I'm sent here to do. And I really believe that God would not have created me as a blind person if he didn't have an overarching purpose or reason. Now, these are certain things that you can either choose to believe or not. I'm not here to proselytize. But I think if you are able to believe that you were created this way for a purpose or for a reason, that you were created as a blind person because you were meant to do something with it that could make a difference for other people, then that allows for you to live a greater, more joyful, more comprehensive, more spiritual, and more fulfilling life.
Attorney Bernstein loves fighting for people and decided to take this passion to Northwestern University School of Law. Although Braille helps those who are blind translate written information, it is quite hard when you have to learn massive amounts of content. Because of this, he had to memorize lectures and have notes read to him to retain material. Law school was excruciating for him. In spite of this, he prayed to God every day and promised he would dedicate his life to people with disabilities and their rights to the judicial system.
God, please let me become a lawyer. I want this in the most desperate way. And if you provide for me this opportunity, if you provide for me this chance, if you allow for me to have this, I promise you that I will dedicate my life to ensuring that others who have disabilities and special needs can have greater access to our judicial system. And so what I've done with that is I came back to our family's law firm, the Sam Bernstein Law Firm, and we established our law firm's Public Services Division. And what our Public Services Division does is we handle cases that nobody else will take. We will fight for causes that no one else will touch. But I think I'm so passionate about my work because I realize how hard I had to fight for it.
Right.
For other people who became lawyers, the struggle wasn't as difficult. It wasn't as cumbersome. It wasn't as intensive as it was for me. And I think for me, because I had to fight so hard for it, I appreciate it every day, and I want to do something with it every day to attempt to make it count and do something good that's going to result for others. So basically the way our division works in our public services division is, again, we do it all pro bono. It's completely a matter of public service. And we will take on cases, like I say, that nobody else will take because we're not charging and we're doing it for free. And not only do we not charge, but then we absorb all the costs of the litigation.
Wow.
So basically, not only are we not charging, but then, when you have massive cases of litigation that go for 5, 6, 7 years, we don't charge for that we don't charge for our own costs. So we absorb all the costs that come from the litigation. We take on all those costs. So as a result, how do you find your purpose? How do you find your passion? I love fighting for people. So right here in Detroit, when you drive around our city, you'll notice that the Detroit buses are the new low-floor buses. Well, that is a case that's been going on now for 7 years that we've been fighting to make sure that people with disabilities, wheelchair users, who at one time didn't have access to Detroit Department of Transportation buses, now can go places, now can travel, now can do things. I get very excited when I go to the University of Michigan and you're able to see people with disabilities attending games, visiting the stadium, enjoying themselves like everybody else. And they're going to a facility that's now been created as a completely accessible facility that everyone can use and enjoy. That took about 4 or 5 years of litigation to do that. It gets you excited when you go to the airport and you see people with disabilities and people with special needs getting on and off aircraft and traveling to places that prior they had great difficulty or impossibility doing. And the fact is that when you can see that the law is making life better for people, when you can see that people with disabilities and special needs are riding on buses, are visiting stadiums, are flying on airplanes, are getting educational opportunities, are living independently, then you know what you realize? You realize that you made the law count. You took your experiences that God gave you, and you took from those experiences and did something that was going to translate into making life a little bit better for other people.
And you were talking about prayer, like that just rolled right off your tongue, like you didn't even think about it. It was something that you said, you prayed to God, this is something that I want so desperately, so badly. How do you think that your time in law school would have been without the prayer?
I don't think I would have survived it. I think, there are so few people with my disabilities that ultimately have the opportunity to become lawyers. I think it was just such a day-to-day struggle in order to kind of work through it and to do it. Also, like I say, as I try to work forward from a recent injury, when you're dealing with tremendous pain and difficulty that arises from it, it's a day-to-day struggle. When you wake up in the morning, you have to face the pain. As you move through the day, you have to face the pain. As you lie down to sleep, you face the pain. So I think it's a day-to-day struggle. But I think ultimately, I really think if you make that conscious decision to truly believe that you are a part of something bigger and that this happened for a reason. Now again, I can't say whether it's true or not, but what I can say is if you make the choice to believe that that is in fact the case, it allows for you to work through things so much better. Because you don't see yourself as a tragic story. You see yourself as a person who's here to serve His Creator, and you ultimately see yourself as a person who's here to do the right thing and is given the necessary experiences and understanding and appreciation of others, the world, challenges and difficulties to gain from that experience, to know how to resolve it, to fix it, to change it, and do something that will have a beneficial impact.
You were talking about decision, and a lot of times people who are trying to look for success in whatever measure, it's very hard to make a decision. You find yourself to be indecisive. You go to college, I don't know what I'm majoring in, or you try to think about what you want to do with yourself, and you say, I don't really know where I want to work, or even in relationships sometimes you say, I don't know if I should cut this person off. How were you able to just make a sound decision and commit to it and not break away from what it was that you decided?
I think that athletics is really the greatest way to live. And I think it's through athletics that I was able to learn these types of life lessons. I think athletics represents life at its core and represents life at its essence. And I think there is no greater way to live, appreciate, or understand life than through athletics. And the reason I say that is because when I did the Ironman, I want people to imagine what that was like. Diving into a frigid body of water. The water temperature of Lake Coeur d'Alene was 55 degrees. 55 degrees. Imagine doing it in total darkness. You have no idea where you started. You have no idea where you're going. And you have no idea where you are. Imagine the feeling you have as you're swimming to get kicked over and over again in the face by other swimmers. They don't mean for it to happen, but it's just the nature of the competition. So imagine that feeling. You're in darkness. You're getting kicked repeatedly in the face, and you can't brace for it. Imagine the feeling you have when you try to surface and get oxygen, but you're unable to do it because there's another swimmer who's immediately above you. Imagine the feeling you have as you're swimming to have other swimmers get entangled in the rope that connects you to your guide. What happens is the only way you really know where to go is you feel the tug of a rope that's around your waist and your guide's waist. But what will happen is other swimmers become entangled. And as they become entangled, the rope becomes constrictive. And as the rope becomes constrictive, you begin to panic naturally. The more you begin to panic, the quicker the rope drags you below the surface. The quicker the rope drags you below the surface, the harder it is to get oxygen. So you can feel the waves crashing above you, but you can't get that oxygen that you so desperately need. And what you learn from that experience is that you quietly and methodically have to work with your guide, have to work with the other entangled swimmer, and you have to find a way to untangle yourself, and you have to find a way to do it quietly and methodically in a way so as not to drown.
Right.
And then ultimately when you achieve that goal, you move forward, and the whole process will repeat itself over and over again. Then you board your tandem bike and ride for 112 miles through the mountains of Idaho. And then you run your full 26.2 mile. Your question was, how do you make your decision? How do you keep your focus? The answer through athletics is ultimately that you realize something important. We're all looking for connection. We're all looking to connect with our Creator. I think it's when you're struggling, when you're in pain, when the outcome is uncertain, when the challenge is real, that the connection becomes the greatest. The one thing that I can say from my own personal experience is that no matter how challenging or difficult or painful life becomes, I can promise everyone that you will always have what you need when you need it. God will give you no more, but I can promise you, He will certainly give you no less.
People can learn more than laws from Richard Bernstein. Instead of racing through life's hurdles, whether good or bad, learn something from them. Quote, make the choice to believe it happened for a reason, end quote.